Welcome back, everybody, to our Almost Sideways sideshow. We are so glad that you are joining us on this deep dive through Band of Brothers, celebrating its 20th anniversary. I am your host, Terry Plucknett. Joining me again, Mr. Adam Daly, first-time watcher of Band of Brothers. He has been enjoying his journey so far. How's it going, Adam?
It's been a pretty good journey, and this is the final countdown to the end of the episode. We have 2 more down, and yeah, it's been definitely. I think I said like episode 4 and F5. I start really progressing in my enjoyability of the show, and the last few episodes have definitely kind of hit pretty awesome. To talk about, especially talking with you, kind of getting more background and reading the comments. So it's been a very interesting and fun conversation to be had. So I'm really excited I finally wrapped it up. So let's talk about it.
All right. Well, as you are listening and watching, make sure you are subscribing, rating, reviewing, checking out everything that's going on with our podcast, with our YouTube channel, and talk about. There we go. Adam, talk about all the YouTube stuff.
Yeah, we are here on YouTube. If you're watching us on the video format, we're dropping different stuff here, reactions to the Band of Brothers. We just dropped Shaun of the Dead review. We have some little snippets I'm slowly editing from the main podcast show too. So make sure you guys subscribe for more content and hit that bell and notification, and also leave your comments because we definitely read them out on the podcast. So yeah, stay up to date. Yeah.
There you go. There you go. Awesome. Well, let's hop into this episode. We're talking episode 9 in right now, which is entitled Why We Fight. And this episode is so different than so many of them. It is definitely the most somber of the episodes. As you get to this point, and it started doing this a little in episode 8 as well, where the fighting is slowing down. There isn't as much battle going on. And you are experiencing what Easy Company is doing as they're slowly marching their way to the end of this war. And I love this episode is so great because it answers that question of the title, Why We Fight. And it's because they come across a concentration camp in this episode. Adam, it's your first time watching this. Just give me initial reaction to this episode, the revelation they have halfway through of finding this, and just kind of what you thought in general.
Well, yeah, we get a focus on Nixon here, which is one of the first times we see he popped up. Of course, we've talked about Nixon quite a bit on the podcast episodes here, but we get a really focus on him a lot here, and he's a whiskey guy. Really like that, of course.
I haven't been able to find the VAT 69. I was trying to. It's really, really hard to find that specific one that he's using, which it does talk about in this episode, how it's kind of a tough one to come by. There is a VAT 69 gold that I was thinking of getting, but I never got around to getting it. So missed opportunity. I may have to get it at some point.
There will be a tasting of some point on the podcast.
There will be.
We might just have a video. Yeah, there you go. Anyway, so I think that's relatable. We love whiskey on the show, so that was cool. I don't know why we're whiskey, but I really liked how Nixon, and when they did hit that revelation of this prison camp, I think that was just kind of like, whoa, it's kind of the way the people were treated. Those are always the hardest things. It kind of reminded me of, we were talking about Saving Private Ryan quite a bit in beginning of the show, but then this kind of last couple episodes kind of reminded me, and I had thoughts of Boy in the Striped Pajamas, which was about the about the Jews in these containment camps here, but also the Deer Hunter too. It's a totally different war, of course, but having that same kind of thing where the POWs in these camps and just how the way they're treated, and it's just like it always kind of jarring when you see heroes and they're in a really bad condition. So it was kind of a little more somber, a little sadder, because you're seeing some of the men and what the aftermath comes of it too. So that's kind of my first initial thoughts. So.
Sure, yeah. I love this episode in how it builds up to that revelation, because it's probably over halfway through the episode when they finally find the camp, and you feel like everything leading up to it is this calm before something, but you don't know what it is. I mean, and they're going along, they're just kind of going through the motions at this point, and they're all starting to ask each other, why are we doing this? What was this all even for? And I thought it was very powerful to have the opening statements by the actual members of Easy Company talking about how they kind of related to some of the German soldiers. And one of them even said, under different circumstances, we might have been really good friends.
Yeah.
And you have this mutual respect, and people were starting to wonder, what's the point? Why are we fighting this war? And there's the great moment in the truck even where Tom Hardy shows up in this episode. As Private Janovich, who or Janovic, he's reading a paper, and Les asks him, what does it say? And he says it's saying why we're fighting the war. So what does it say? Well, it says the Germans are bad, very, very bad. This guy says the Germans are bad. It's such a great moment there, but you realize just why World War II was such a different war than really any other war that especially the United States has fought, and almost like any other war in general, because you could easily point to there was this definite evil that was lurking in our world, and they didn't realize what that evil was until they came across this camp, and how they had just locked up these people, and millions and millions were killed and trying to get rid of an entire race of people. And it's at that moment that they realize, oh, this is why we're fighting. Mm-hmm. And it's just so moving, and they spend so much time just kind of in this montage of what's going on. And I write notes as we're going along of stuff to talk about, and I couldn't write anything down during that time because it's just such a moving just piece of art as they're going around this camp, and the reactions of everybody involved, all the soldiers, of what's going on. And from Winters to Nixon to Liebgott to O'Keefe, who's another one that's kind of focused on here, that replacement that is just wanting to see some action. Liebgott, I think, is one of the more fascinating ones, because if fast forward to episode 1, Liebgott is the one that got in a fight with somebody because someone said that Sobel was a Jew, and he took offense because he's also Jewish. So here he is as the interpreter who has to interpret the soldier, or not the soldier, the prisoner, saying we're all here because we're Jewish. And here he is, a Jewish man, coming to the realization that this is all happening because they want to get rid of people like me. And it's just a heartbreaking moment. And it dominates everything else that goes on, because there's some really interesting stuff that happens in the rest of this episode that build up. I mean, you've got the soldiers relaxing and all this stuff, but the camp. I mean, it's what this whole episode is about. It's the concentration camp episode, and it just blows you away. I think it's one of the better representations of a concentration camp that you can find on film, of just these soldiers finding it and realizing this is what's been going on.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, it's tough to look back, even though I watched it a few days ago, but it is tough. It's because it is focused. You kind of just you'll watch stuff before the camp, and then all of a sudden that camp scene happens. And you're like, what just happened before it? Your memory is kind of swept up in those moments and those images. So it is powerfully shot. There are some interesting things. That's why I rely on your notes a lot, because I'm like, oh yeah, I remember that. That's why it's hard sometimes the first time watches. It's like it's hard to pick up on little things. So, but yeah, those images, I think, I don't know. Yeah, those concentration camp sequences, those are just those were kind of, it's rough, but it's also kind of just, that's why we're doing this, and that's why we have to do what we're doing, because they think that they don't deserve to be here, and that's not okay. And that's they're trying to get back and fight for people who maybe can't fight for themselves. 100% can't fight for themselves because they're being put in camps like this and treated horribly. And not just treated horribly, they're being kind of killed and slaughtered pretty bad, horribly too. So that's why they came in, and that's why they're fighting for a race of people.
And it's amazing to look back at World War II and realize they're fighting this war, and they're fighting it because Hitler's out to conquer the world. And then they find out that once they break through the lines and they're getting through to everything, that this is what had been going on. I mean, it almost would be like the Civil War is being fought, and then like as you get to the end of it, the North goes, "Wait, they had slaves?" I mean, yeah, it's like the whole purpose of the war was not even realized until it was almost over. At least the war in Europe. I mean, they even said at the beginning, when you go back to the very beginning of the show, why did these people join? They joined because of Pearl Harbor. It had nothing to do with Hitler. Yet the evil of what was going on in the world was what Hitler was doing to these millions and millions of people. And this realization as the war is coming to an end, that this evil had been lurking behind the lines the whole time, is incredible. And it makes it interesting that Nixon is the focus of this episode, because Nixon is having this crisis of identity and why all this is happening throughout the episode. It starts off, he jumps with another company into a battle, and the plane gets blown up, and only 3 of them get off, and he's got to write all the letters home. He gets demoted. He is just looking for the next drink he could possibly find. He is in a bad spot. He finds out he's getting a divorce. Another great moment is when he realizes
about that. Yeah,
she's taking the dog. It's my dog. And he's just in this bad spot, and then he sees this is why we're doing this, because he's getting to a point, like he has that conversation with Winters of, what do I tell these boys' families? He said, you tell them they died as heroes. He said, did they do you really believe that still? Is that why we're here, to be heroes, to do all? And he's questioning, why is this war even being fought? And then he sees it. So you have Nixon see it. You have the newbie O'Keefe see it. You have all these different people coming from these different backgrounds. And what the most ominous moment of the whole thing is the troop is walking through the woods, and you slowly start to see the ash falling from the sky, and they're all just kind of wondering what is going on. And if you at least, I mean, I don't know if you realize what that was at that moment. It's like, what are they about to walk into?
Yeah, it's not good. Yeah, it's kind of interesting because a lot of people would be just, we're just there to find a Luger or fight and do our civil duty or whatever. But then when they actually kind of get behind that first couple layers and then dig deeper into the situation, like it's very eye-opening. It's like, oh, we've been doing this for almost 3 years, over 3 years, and then now we're realizing the point. This is why. And it's kind of like I guess the Germans did a really good job hiding a lot of what their evilness truly was and what they were actually doing to this race of people, to the people. And I don't know. It's really powerful stuff, especially when you're having a guy like Nixon, who you've seen throughout the show, and you see as pretty, as Winter's friend and pretty good soldier in his own right. And then he's questioning, going through all his doubts, and you can relate to having self-doubts at times too, and then realizing, this is why, I had to go through all this, and what my kind of personal issues don't really matter in the long run. Like, this is why I'm doing something. And so it's like, that's why. And then if I feel like he kind of like snapped out of it a little bit, like those problems are still there, but no, I need to focus on my task here first. So, yeah. It's cool.
And I love
to see Nixon like have a focal point episode. So this is like the perfect episode for him.
Yeah, and I love how they start with the end in this episode. You start with that close up on the violin and that very somber piece by Mozart. No, it's not Mozart. That's Beethoven. But this very somber piece as you see people picking through rubble, and you just ask yourself, what just happened?
Mm-hmm.
And then you end with that same visual, and it even ends with a close up on the violin again. I thought that was really cool that you started and ended with the exact same shot. But you realize something's going to happen here, but then you go away from it and you go back to where it all starts, and it starts with them kind of partying. The war's over. They're in Germany. Percani is, when he tells off O'Keefe, he's like, Germany is like just as good as home, almost as good as being home. I've got warm showers. I've got warm food. This is the best it's been. And you have Tom Hardy fraternizing. You have extracurricular activities. You have Spears looting houses and taking a bunch of silver candlesticks and everything and shipping it all home. You have Luz raiding a barn to make an omelet. I mean, you have a lot of they're just like, how do we make life good for ourselves? I mean, this is basically over. There's nothing going on really. And then it hits. And it's just such a wallop over the head. And there's a lot of other little stuff happening in the background of this too. And they're just kind of almost throwaway lines where you have Nixon announce that FDR dies during this episode.
Oh yeah.
He announces at the very end Hitler dies during this episode. And just little bits of the history that are happening while all this is going on for them. Let's see here. There was something else I was going to say with that too. But you're getting to know some of these characters a little more. They're relaxed, and then it hits them of the concentration camp. And one thing that we didn't mention yet that is the most heartbreaking moment is when the doctor comes over and tells them, you have to put them all back in, because we need to regulate their food intake. We need to regulate their water intake so they don't eat themselves to death. And the look on Liebgott's face as he's having to announce it to them, you all need to go back in. You all need to stay here. We have nowhere else to put you. And it's just this heartbreaking moment that,
your natural instincts is like, oh, let's get him out of this really bad situation, right? And you're totally going against what your natural instinct is there.
Get all the food you can.
Yeah, you want to. Okay, well, I'm gonna get fed because I'm freaking hungry and malnourished, and then say, no, whoa, you need to go back, or you're actually gonna die because you're gonna do too much. So it's That would be a tough predicament to be put in yourself. I don't know. You got to do what's the right thing for them to keep them alive, but it would be a hard thing for them, for at least for me to understand why I'm going back in there. I was like, I don't want to be back here. These are only bad memories. I want to move forward, but that's definitely tough.
Yeah. Well, and going and getting all the food leads to a very intense moment with Webster, who we just watched him in the Last Patrol kind of be the focal point, and he plays a pretty good role in this one too. At one point, he's yelling at the Germans as they're retreating and marching back. What are we even doing here? Why is this happening? Why is all? You guys have horses. What were you thinking? But then they go back and get the food, and him in the baker's shop, and they get getting all the bread, and the baker's freaking out at him, and he pulls his gun on him, and he calls him a Nazi. He goes, I'm not a Nazi. And he goes, oh, you're not a Nazi? How about a human being? You can't tell me you didn't smell it. and it's how many of those people were trying to just stay blissfully ignorant of what was going on, or knew and were kind of just letting it happen, without the consequences there. And you have that again with when Nixon breaks into the one German officer's house, and the wife kind of scolds him with her eyes. She gives him the look, like that's as close to the look as possible. And then he sees her having to dig the graves because they made all the townspeople go and dig the graves for the dead in the concentration camp. That's a powerful moment too, where you see this is what you've been doing. This is what you've been allowing to happen.
Yeah. You might not have done the act, but you're kind of guilty by association, guilty by turning a blind eye, so to speak. Like you're still guilty of doing this because you're not standing up for the people who are setting up to the people that are letting this happen. So yeah, that is definitely powerful. Yeah.
Let's see here. I feel like Nixon going through the current events, like, okay, no, we don't need to talk about that. Oh, Rita Hayworth's getting married. Oh, say it ain't so.
Say it ain't so.
Oklahoma's still playing on Broadway, and oh, poor O'Keefe. Luz really sets him up on that one. Yeah, I mean, this episode is. There's so much that happens, but so much of it just is tied to that revelation of the concentration camp and that moving moment. There's not really a whole lot of little details that we can talk about necessarily.
But it's definitely a powerful episode because again, it's something that was very prominent in this war. So it definitely needed to be. I'm glad they had an episode dedicated to that, and because obviously this is an event that happened to this company, so it was good that they showed this kind of revelation in the show too, because it was something it's a good reminder, like this is why they were over there doing what they were supposed to doing,
Yeah, and it just shows again how much Easy Company went through in this war.
They were everywhere in this thing.
They were everywhere. And there was something else I was going to say with that. This is probably, for me, the most emotional episode. Just because the visuals and the moment of seeing all those people and seeing them discover it, and the looks on their faces as they're discovering it, and it's just so moving and so impactful. It hits it as well as like Schindler's List hits it in some ways of just what that was like in World War II. And it's impossible to talk World War II without talking about it, especially in Europe. And the fact that they found it and they were a part of this and they had to experience that, is just incredible.
Yeah. Agreed.
All right. Well, I mean, this is kind of a downer episode, and it's kind of a bummer to leave it on a downer note like that. But
if you guys are watching this, what did you guys think of the episode? What are some little moments? I guess we should. What do you think? What's stuff that stuck out to you? That's another. We would like to know.
Yes. As we leave this episode, one of the last things, like we said, it mentions that Hitler is dead, and I love that. A great moment's like, why didn't he do that 3 years ago? Could have saved us all a lot of trouble. But we find out that as that happens, they're marching out and they're moving on to one of their final destinations, which we'll be talking about when we get to episode 10 and we wrap up this series. So it's kind of a downer, penultimate episode, but it is an amazing episode, a powerful episode, that in a story that always needs to be told, that we can't forget about all the lives that were lost, innocent lives that were lost as a part of World War II. All right. That's why they fight. That's why they fought. That is going to do it for episode 9. Thank you guys so much for listening, for watching. We will be back at you very soon. Like I said, wrap this up. 10 episodes.
Yeah.
Episode 10 is coming soon. Make sure you watch out for that. And until then, enjoy.
Later.